So, as many of you know, Dr. Leanne Illich is a trained cancer doctor. I've just gone blank. I can't remember what it's called.
Oncologist.
Oncologist. Sorry, it's late here at night. I'm fading, my friend. But as we know, she's become a sales and business expert, psychologist, and neuroscientist. She's recently been chartered by the Institute as a neuroplastician. So rock and roll to Leanne. It's so good to have you here, and I'm so interested to be part of this conversation, Leanne. So I'm really excited to have you in the community at the NPN Hub, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation to learn more, to deep dive into your curious brain. So what are we going to cover today, Leanne? What is
Yeah,
the
we're going to
topic?
cover lots of things, but I thought firstly,
Yes.
JJ, it might be good just to for those that, because I know a number of people that are on the call that know
Yes.
about the NPN Hub and what all the work that you and the team do. It might be good just to talk about that just for a couple of minutes for people to get an understanding and context about it whilst we're all together.
Very good. So
yeah.
A mutual friend introduced Leanne and myself, and we saw a lot of interest and commonality. My work in organizational neuroscience here in Switzerland is very much in line with what Leanne is doing at the Institute of Organizational Neuroscience, where we've been supervising PhDs, and one of the conversations was around looking at neuroplasticity for the practitioner. So we've, in 6 months, it's been ridiculously quick. We've started an institute advisory board to look at the discipline of applied neuroplasticity. We've built a community which Leanne is very much involved in. Faye, as well, as you can see, Faye in the top right of my screen, Faye has been a formidable collaborator and convener and PhD candidate. So we're looking at building a community around understanding the application of neuroplasticity. That's our basic goal. You can go look at the community at NPN Hub. I'll drop it in the chat so that you can all look at it. The goal really is quite simple. It's to build a community around the science as practitioners, not as academics. So we're all in the place of helping business thrive. Some of us are coaches, some of us educators, some of us practitioners, but we're all serious about the science in a very silly communal kind of way. So we're trying to build that communal energy, and Leanne's role is incredibly important. So Leanne, thank you for being part of our community, and we're all looking forward to deep diving into your brain and learning more about it so that we can share with everybody how this fits into our collaboration. And we are interested in building in everybody's expertise. So Faye is bringing some incredibly interesting work around neurodiversity and how that works across the spectrum and how cognitive diversity is relevant in the workplace. Anyway, I won't steal your PhD topic, Faye, but it is very interesting on the work that we're all doing together. So, Leanne, the opportunity for today is for you to teach us in the Institute how to turn not-for-profit initiative into a thriving billion-dollar industry. So, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about what you're doing. And I can see you've opened a really nice slide deck. So why don't you tell us the introduction? Over to you, Leanne.
Yep, I will. Just going to call this up so everybody can see. So, okay, you're in charge of the chat. So for me, thanks very much for the introduction. Also having me on to conduct this roundtable, and thanks to everyone that is live on this webinar event, and also to those that are listening to the recording. Thank you. For me, those of you that know me know I am absolutely obsessed about the application of neuroscience in business and sales. And that was, no, it's not a Formula One track out there. It's some crazy person just thinking that they are it and center. Anyway, so I I got into this field of science a long time ago. It started off with me as an oncologist, as JJ said, and then stepping into the world of behaviors and neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience, which is what my PhD is in business, and how we apply this, because we don't realize how important our brain is in everything that we do, in particular when it comes to applied neuroscience to business and in sales. Really, the up and down regulation of hormones and the feelings and the emotions that we go through is quite extraordinary, and we can ethically influence that to nudge people, as we call it, to drive them or motivate them to make certain decisions that are ethical. It needs to be good for them, good for us, in a certain way. So for business and sales in particular, it is an iconic way of working with your clients, with your customers and consumers. So I just wanted to give you just a quick introduction of me. I actually took this slide out. JJ just said, pop it back in, pop it back in. People want to know about you. And when I do a lot of my keynotes, I have this because people want the context. But the problem I have with it is it looks like it's a lot, and it is, and there's so much more to it. But I am one of those academics with a sense of humor, believe it or not. And that's what I find with the NPN Hub, is that everybody, it's really cool. And I just slotted and just fitted right in, which was great. So on the more serious side, just for like 60 seconds, I am a business and sales psychologist, a neuroscientist, and a leadership advisor. And I do a lot of leadership psychology work as well. I've just chaired a couple of conferences the last couple of weeks on that. All science actually was women in technology that I did, which was great. So backgrounds in medicine, neuroscience, behavioral economics, behavioral science, neuroeconomics as well, which is very similar. I studied at the University of Sydney, which is where I got my med degree. I'm a Harvard grad, so Harvard Medical School and Harvard Business School. I've done a lot of lecturing, and I'm actually an honorary clinical fellow by the Queensland University of Technology, QUT, for those in Australia who know that acronym, appointed by the Dean. I am an author. I have written a book, actually one book, two editions, so 2 books. I speak a lot. I have a PhD I've got here in business neuroscience. It's basically cognitive neuropsychology in business, which is what my thesis was on. And I am accredited in CIQ, which is conversational intelligence, which is basically understanding the neuroscience and what happens to the brain when we communicate and we conduct conversations. It's a science that was tapped into by a phenomenal woman called Judith Glasser, who has since passed away of pancreatic cancer, unfortunately, a number of years ago. Her husband is leading and continuing her legacy in this phenomenal work. A lot of the work that she does is invitation only, and I've been lucky enough to be involved in that, and part of my PhD was part of that as well. What I haven't got on there, which some of you do know, is that I am a top 20 women in business in Australia, or as awarded that by the Australian government this year as well, which was pretty cool. And that actually was an out-of-body experience, because we had to get dressed up, go to Government House, and it was just amazing. And I honestly felt like I was on a movie set. It was just incredible. So I met some other extraordinary women as well. So just moving on to what we actually do in our business before we step into the science, because people say, Leanne, what do you do? And I normally say I talk all the time. I love what I do. It is something where I build relationships and teach people science. What more could you want? What more could you ask for? So what we actually do is we help teach the skills and strategies and tactics to ethically influence people, customers, clients, and amplify business growth using behavioral science and neuroscience techniques. So we get under the skin of why people behave the way they do, because it is very interesting. We think we are in control. We think we can potentially be in control of others, but When we are under stress and under certain anxieties, we don't. We step into our default, and one area of stress is business, and one escalated area of stress is sales. So that's where my expertise comes in. So by understanding people's cognitive biases and heuristics, we'll go into that a little bit, that they use to make decisions, we use those elements to be able to influence what people do. For me, it's important that we inspire businesses and people to impact the world. So for me, it's all about, what can I do on my team and my community and all the people that I know to help one another, but to help businesses grow, entrepreneurs grow, big corporates grow ethically, by using science. So it's not going to be too sciencey, because I know that there are people on here that don't have a full understanding of neuroscience, but I do need to make it a little bit sciencey for those that are in the hub. So just bear with me. So decision making, what happens to our brain? Lots of things. In fact, one of the latest Harvard studies is that 93% of all decisions that we make are emotional. 7% is logical. There's actually only 2 reasons that we make decisions. One is to solve a problem, and the other is to feel good. That is it. It's us that complicate the process. Our brains are extremely, they are complex, but our behaviors are not. We behave in a way that, which is why history repeats itself, why we make mistakes. We learn from our mistakes, but we do them again because we are hardwired to behave in a certain way. Personality traits come into it. I do a lot of profiling. I do a lot of facial recognition profiling. Even they have patterns that we follow. If we tap into our subconscious or our collective unconscious, there are certain innate, inborn models that we follow that are very hard to break. So they are our strengths, so we use them. So decision making is really, really interesting. So there's something that I call the wisdom of 5 brains. Now, I did notice Adrian, I saw you pop in to the meeting, and Adrian and I are actually, she's a phenomenal woman. In January, Adrian is going to be interviewing me, and we're going to be talking in a lot of detail about the wisdom of 5 brains. This is a topic I spoke at one of her conferences, Adrian McLean, and it was a little bit about this. And so we're going to be going deeper. I'm just going to touch on it now, but there's actually 6 brains, a wisdom of 6 brains, but I'm not going to go into the gut brain. I'm actually only going to be really going into 2 here, which is our primitive brain and our executive brain. This image is from the Creating We Institute, which is where all the conversational intelligence work, or the CIQ work, comes from. I can break this down into a full, this image into a full webinar, which we're not going to. But the one thing, the two areas that I really want you to concentrate on is our primitive brain, which sits at the base. That is where we stimulate cortisol, which is our stress hormone. Also agitates our amygdala. We often call it amygdala hijack, which it's activated once we're under stress. I'll talk about that a bit more in a sec. And then we have our prefrontal cortex, our executive brain, which regulates oxytocin, which is our feel-good hormone, also dopamine and all those other goodies. And it also is an extremely collaborative and co-creative space. When we are selling and when we are doing business, and from an application and coaching perspective, we need to move people, and there's different paces depending on profiles, from if they are sitting in the back of their brain all the way to the front, because this is where the magic happens. Now, not all personality profiles remain in their prefrontal cortex when they are in that trusting relationship when you're doing business and selling, but we want to try and get there and maintain. So for sustainable business, it's really important that we activate that prefrontal cortex. So just to explain a little bit more, also known as our executive brain, considered the orchestra conductor of our entire central nervous system. I always say that in sales or in business, a CEO, a founder, a sales manager, a sales director is the conductor of their team. I have actually written an article. I think, JJ, you saw the article about me talking about the orchestra, and how the brain is the missing instrument in the orchestra that we need. It needs to be fine-tuned. We can tell when it's actually not working optimally because we don't close the deal, or there's negotiation that doesn't go well, or there's objections that we can't answer, or there's fears that people are feeling that we really need to tap into. So that missing instrument, as I call it, is really important. And it all happens in our prefrontal cortex. So it's provides a mastery of functions, judgment, trust, integrity, and empathy. It holds our most advanced capabilities and is where we grow and collaborate. It is what we call our we center. So it's where, as I said, magic happens. It's where we build relationships, engagement. We can communicate in a totally different level. We hold level 3 conversations, which are technically transformational conversations, which is where we do business really well and we sell really well. And it's ethical. Let's go back into the red, which is our primitive brain back here, which is what stimulates and activates our stress hormone, also known as our reptilian brain. I had someone say to me the other day when I was teaching this, what's our ancient brain called? I'm like, okay, technically in a way, yep, our reptilian brain. So it's essential for our survival and basic functions. It protects us. That's the brain's job, is to make us feel safe. FAF is an acronym. We know flight and fright. FAF is flight, fright, freeze, appease, and faint. So that is the full conglomerate of emotions and feelings and physical sensations that our body goes through when we start feeling stressed, we start feeling anxious, vulnerable. Alan, hopefully you and Remy are listening. You would, Alan, who is a friend on the call, is an advocate for domestic violence in women. This is something that I was going to say we, because I'm not going into this, but unfortunately I'm part of that statistic. Is something that they sit in a lot. But what happens, and you're going to be really interested to find out in a minute, what happens when we are selling? We go into what we call amygdala hijack. So one of the most common words we hear in sales is no. In fact, I've had people say to me and my team in the past, no, before they even know them, because they've got that feeling of, you're going to try and sell me something. It's sleazy, it's dirty, it's yucky. Sales in particular is so much fun when you get it right. In fact, we are all accidental salespeople. Sales doesn't have to be transactional. It can be a transfer of knowledge, opinion, advice. I try and negotiate with my puppy dog every single day. I'm trying to sell her something so she can buy in and do what I want her to do. Same with children, same with other people. We are constantly engaging in a sales process. The word sale or the label sale is what we get hung up on. That yucky S word. But unfortunately, that's what makes life and business go round and round and round. Because we need to learn, we need to grow, we need to buy products, we need to sell products or services, whatever it is. We've got expertise to tell the world. We've got expertise to learn. That's sales. So we hear and see no all the time. We also think of sales as a transaction. You can see my pot of gold there with the bag of money and notes and coins. There's a very, very interesting study that I'm going to mention here. Professor Brian Knudsen and his crew at Stanford University. They are doing a long-term clinical trial. It's still going on. It wasn't, but it is, because of the results they've seen. So what he did is got a cohort to do an fMRI. So an fMRI is a functional MRI. Basically, it looks at brain activity. So uptake of blood when you stimulate the brain, and uptake of activity that gets transferred into electrical impulses, and you can actually see what the brain is doing. I've actually had one myself, it was incredibly going to say eye-opening because my brain doesn't stop. Those of you that know me know that. Often get, do you sleep, Leanne? Yeah, I do, but my brain keeps going. I've got so much that I want to do. And, you know, we all think about that. And we are very hyper-connected and hyper, you know, neurologically active. What happened is he showed these participants some different stimulus. So one was, and it was all to do with sales. So he showed them pictures of something they wanted to buy. So for me, it showed me a picture of shoes because, you know, I love shoes. I mean, I have a biscuit pairs, but you can never have enough, right? So they showed, say, something that they liked, and the pleasure centers activated, which is in the front, their prefrontal cortex. Everything just activated. Yep, dopamine, oxytocin. Woo, it was a party. And then they showed an intent to purchase. Same thing. Pleasure centers lit up, front of the brain. Awesome. This is exactly what we were thinking. Then they showed having to purchase, so a picture of, like what I've got here, money, currency, a price tag, the intent to purchase. So not that you want to purchase, the actual nudge to purchase. And they all thought, so Brian Knudsen and his team all thought, oh, well, the pleasure centers are going to activate for sure because you're now going to be buying and you're going to have it in your, you know, hot little hands. The opposite happened. It activated the pain center. So the back of the brain lit up like a Christmas tree. They went to an amygdala hijack. Cortisol went through the roof. The transaction caused a protection mechanism, and they were absolutely dumbfounded by this. It was not expected. So this study and all this research is now continuing. So what it shows is that we are actually, when it comes to money, when it comes to sales, we subconsciously activate our pain centers and we think, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. So it is our job, when we have our genius, our expertise, our products, our services that we know so well, it is our job to move people, remember the wisdom of 5 brains, from the back to the front in a way that people are comfortable. So I've got pictures of two little brains here. Just think it's your brain. Cortisol. Oh my God. Oh my God. I need to part with my money. I'm going to transact. Thinking it was going to be fun. It doesn't. It causes pain. But what we want is our oxytocin and dopamine from our prefrontal cortex to go up. Yay, happy. Also, with my little animated brain here, where I've got starry-eyed and I'm going to knocked out and in shock, on the right, I've got my little brain that's happy. In fact, he's, yay, look at him. He's really, really happy. Rosy cheeks, big eyes. And he's also got a light bulb. And he's pointing to it. I've got an idea. So it opens up neural pathways for us to, and we become, JJ's going to love this, more neuroplastic. Neuroplasticity is so important in sales and in business in general. It allows people into our world. It lets us into the green part of our brain. I've got the green arrow going up. That's what we want. It makes us feel happy. Remember, there's 2 reasons why people buy: solve a problem and to make them feel good, emotion and logic. I want you to keep thinking about that. So they came up with this purchase formula. It just came out of this, out of the research and out of the study that has happened so far, that the likelihood of purchase, of someone purchasing or engaging with you or doing business, is the amount of the reward activation over the amount of the pain activation. So if we can increase the dopamine, oxytocin, and we can, I guess we don't want to balance. We want, you know, our prefrontal cortex to take and activate a lot more than our primitive brain. We want people out of an amygdala hijack. We want the feel-good hormones. We want people to feel, yay, this is great. If we can get that level above the pain activation, that we're on the right track. Now, I've got here likelihood of purchase. Doesn't mean they're going to go, yes, give me 100. That's what we want. We're on our way. We start with 1, then we start with 10, then we start with 50. And slowly, as we engage people and as we get them comfortable and in that trust mechanism, the likelihood of purchase or the probability of purchase goes up. But we need to make sure we're getting people to sit in the front of their brain. They need to be very neuroplastic. So why do people behave the way they do? Our decision making is not as rational as we think. So I have used this slide a number of times. People go, "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Leanne." I do very interactive keynotes. It's actually quite funny. Very enjoyable for everybody and me, because I like people taking part and also learning this stuff because I'm so passionate about it, because it's so important. It's so important. It's heavily influenced by our unconscious drivers in our environment. So I've got here too: behavioral science, psychology, neuroscience is in there, neuroeconomics is in there. It's all in the same family. So for those that don't know the full definition, I'm just going to give you quickly just two quick definitions, very basic definitions. Behavioral science, understanding why people behave the way they do. Psychology, understanding why people think and behave the way they do. We can then go into behavioral economics or neuroeconomics, which is basically looking at cultural diversity, cognitive, all different areas and the whole ecosystem in how we then get people to transact the economics of the science. But we're not going to go into that today. As much as I'd love to, we don't have time. So there's 3 fundamental principles, the way our brain works. Everyone is irrational. We don't actually know what motivates people, and no one likes to think. So the first question is, I'm rational. I know what motivates myself. And of course I like to think. I mean, you're all thinking, Leanne, how did you do all that stuff without thinking? Well, of course we do think, but we don't like it. And there's a lot of us that have done a lot of thinking, and there's a lot of very, very established and well accredited and phenomenal men and women in this webinar. And also those of you that are listening as well. Just think about that. So we're irrational. This is a study that was done in the US. Actually, most of them are done in the US with the 2 aspirins. This was presented to people. One was 1 cent, one was 50 cents. And they were asked which aspirin would work better. Of course, majority of people, when I ask this question with an audience, everyone, well, first of all, those that know me go, there's something to this, because Leanne wouldn't just ask a straightforward question. There's going to be something behind it. So majority of people, if they don't know who I am and have just been presented, which is exactly what happened in this study, they were just presented this. They were asked the simple question, which one would work better? Of course, people said 50 cents. How can a 1 cent aspirin work? Fair enough. Fair enough. They then actually gave them to people. They took them, said, this is the 50 cent, this is the 1 cent. Which one worked better? Oh, 50 cent was great. My headache's gone. 1 cent, no. It was a placebo. In fact, they weren't. They were exactly the same. Not only were they from the same box, they were from the same blister packet when they were given to the participant. But we've got a bias and we go, well, how could a 1 cent possibly work? We've made an assumption, also known as a mental or cognitive heuristic. Second one, we don't know what motivates people. Most of our decision-making is subconscious. We are all accidental liars. There is certain behaviors that are acceptable. There was a TED talk, I use this example because I really like it, of a behavioral designer, behavioral scientist. She did a TED talk. And she asked the entire, by the way, I'm dying to do a TED talk, so I'll put in my application. We'll see what happens. So she asked the entire auditorium, put your hand up if you washed your hands after you went to the toilet. Of course, everyone put their hand up. And she goes, some of you are liars. And that is true. The expected behavior is that you wash your hands after you go to the toilet. Those that didn't wash their hands, of course, they put their hand up because they didn't want to be found out. And also, it is the expected behavior. So we've made a decision based on something that's not true. And this is where when I talk to, especially big corporates, when we're getting feedback, that it's important to observe behaviors and not just the written word. Because we write what we think is expected. We write what we think is going to be the right thing. We technically don't like conflict. We don't want to go to the back of our brain and hijack our amygdala. So we do what's easiest. So we want to do what makes us feel good. So we actually aren't really primed for conflict. So we write down what is expected. There is a study that was done. Actually, there's a lot of studies that have been done about the authenticity of feedback on a feedback form, whether you put your name to it or not. And it's been found that if you do put your name, or someone puts their name to the feedback, that is more authentic than not, which makes sense because they're responsible and accountable. But it still doesn't beat observing behaviors. That will tell you a lot because it's subconscious. They don't know what they're doing. They're doing what is natural and comfortable for them. Might not be the right thing. That's what you want, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody and it's not malicious or mean. That's actually what you want. Gives you the best feedback. And then anchoring. Anchoring is also a bias. So decisions are influenced by the first information we see. I use this a lot and teach this a lot in sales. Anchoring is very, very, very strong. It's a very powerful tool. Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, phenomenal human being, and you would know the book. Most of you have probably written it. If not, it's a bit of a chubby book, but it's awesome. Talks about two types of thinking. We've got system 1, system 2, type 1, type 2, however you want to categorize it. And he did a study, it's called the roulette study. So we got two groups of people, one group that were both playing roulette, and he got one group where the ball was fixed on the number 10 of the roulette table, and the other group where the number was fixed on number 65 of the roulette table. And he then asked them a random question. I can't remember the exact question, but it's something along the lines of, like, really random. How many African-American committee members on the United Nations? So it's something totally random, something that he knew that they wouldn't be able to answer. They would have to guess, and you know, a pretty logical guess. The group, which was the second group, where the ball was fixed on 65, they answered a number 75% higher because they were primed by, it's called the framing effect. They were primed by the number that they just saw. So an example I give in sales is that you and it's something that I do with big organizations that have got big sales, big deals. So for me, in my experience and my background, is selling products that are $100, consumables, up to robotic medical equipment. So I used to sell something called the cyberknife, which is for neurological, both malignant and benign lesions and anomalies. We often would treat teeny weeny, literally teeny weeny nerves. Accuracy is phenomenal. We're talking sub millimeter. Very expensive, 10 million US. So that's the range of products that I used to sell. Obviously, the processes are very different. But what we would do, and what a technique or a tactic that we would use is that, and I'll give you an example, is that we go into, let's just say we go into a supermarket and we buy $100 voucher. We then go into an electronics store and we look at a TV that's $5,000. We look at the differential and go, wow, that's expensive. Besides the number of zeros, we've primed for 100. We're now looking at 5,000. Wow, that's a lot for a TV. I go into Apple and I buy a $3,000 MacBook. I then go into the same electronics store and look at that TV. It's $5,000. Besides, the pricing differential is different. So 5,000 to 100 opposed to 5,000 to 3,000. I am primed at a larger number. So even though that TV is the same price, it does not seem anywhere near as expensive because I have framed my mind with a more expensive price. Now, anchoring bias is really, really powerful. No one likes to think. So our brains, believe it or not, are extremely metabolically expensive. It does a lot of work. In fact, another study that I was around, do a lot of research, a lot of study. A lot of you know that. I read, write. There is an average. Now, I'm not sure the mechanism of analyzing, again, these statistics, but there's an average of how many newspapers our brain consumes. So the amount of information we consume on a daily basis equates to, on average, 174 newspapers. So if we got a newspaper, we read it from cover to cover, all the text, we translated the imagery as well, because that's obviously open interpretation. So we need to look at images and interpret those. And we did that 174 times. That's the amount of communication, the amount of information that our brain consumes every day. That's a lot. We have a limited capacity. And that then leads to decision fatigue, because it's poor decision making. We are in overload and we have to make shortcuts. So in the environment that we're in, we need to be able to guide decision making. But how do we do it when we're all doing so much thinking? Our customers, our clients, ourselves. I've just put down my 174th newspaper and now I'm going to see a client, potential client. How am I going to do that? It is really hard. So we design an environment to guide people to make the right decisions. And this is called nudging. So this is a technique that Richard Thaler in 2008 published a book, won a Nobel Prize, called Nudge. A lot of his work is a premise for this. Obviously, he doesn't go into the deep into the science or the neuroplasticity of it, but it is enough for most people. But basically, a nudge contains a design and communication elements that gently ethically steer individuals towards a desired or a particular action. So when we think about designing a nudge, and this is the work that I do, we look at a business or we look at an environment and go, right, this is what outcome that you want. It's like what I call like the tube. If you've been to London, and I use the tube, spider web of infrastructure, because it's colorful and we can all relate to it. We've got here in Australia, we've got our stations and our train system and infrastructure in different states and also around the world, but we also tend to know the tube. So I use that. And it's basically at every point that the train stops, does the patient, sorry, I've all of a sudden gone into clinical mode. Let me get out of clinical mode. Does the client, does the customer get off, stay on, change? And that is how your business operates. And that is how sales operates. Do they change their mind? Do they say no? Do they say yes? We create a choice architecture, which is like a tube network within the business, to design at each point these nudges to be able to drive and guide people on a certain pathway. And this is where the power of cognitive biases come in. Now, I normally go through 10. I'm only going to go through 5 today because I know we've got limited time and I want to be open for questions and discussion. And I know JJ will probably want to address you guys as well quickly at the end. So we're going to do 5. I also have an ebook that you can download from my website that I have unpacked 40. So the Cognitive Bias Codex is almost 300 now. Not all of them are applicable in business and sales, that is for sure. But there are 40 that are really super duper awesome for this kind of environment. And so I have chosen those 40 and the top 40 and unpacked them for businesses and sales professionals, business professionals, sales professionals. So you're more than welcome. I can also send through the link if you want to download that if you're interested. If not, that's okay. Just keep listening. So first one, the framing effect. I mentioned that already. People are influenced by how information is presented. So 2 more studies. We've got a framing presence versus absence and framing time versus money. So what happens to our brain here? We've got 2 tubs of yogurt. These are all studies, by the way. One's 20% fat-free, one's 80% fat-free. I normally ask, which one do we think was a sellout? Now, you guys are probably thinking to yourself and phonetically saying, oh, the 80% fat-free. I hope that's what you're saying, because that's exactly right. The 80% fat-free, so the absence, is what flew off the shelf. The 20% fat yogurt remained. They are both 20% fat. They are both 80% fat-free. But the framing and the initiation, the power of this cognitive bias nudged us. So the train station did a certain thing. We nudged for this particular yogurt to be purchased, sale. Time versus money. This was Walgreens. Save 2.5 hours per week or save $150 per year. So a lot of people say, oh, $150 per year is what I want to save at first glance. Then they think about it and they go, actually, no, I want to save 2.5 hours per week, because we value time way more than money. In fact, it is statistically shown that we are willing to spend money to save time. How can you use that bias in your business? 2, people use emotion to drive most decision making, the endowment effect. Now, I talked about 93% emotion. Also, it's subconscious. We want to tap people into the front of their brain, their pleasure centers. Remember, the activation of the pleasure center over the pain. Endowment effect. Brilliant. Ownership or intent to own something creates an emotional bond that people don't want to break. And we place a higher value on items we intend to buy. This is also with Professor Knudsen, when he showed that stimulus of the intention of buying, for me, let's say, a pair of shoes. I reckon the prefrontal cortex would have exploded. I would have been so happy. Oh my God, I'm going to buy a pair of shoes. I'm going to buy a pair of shoes. This is awesome. So the intent. So there's 2 effects: endowment effect, IKEA effect. Yes, there is a bias called the IKEA effect. So I've got 2 umbrellas here. One's $10.50. This is not mine. It's in the store. Or it's online. And I'm looking at it and go, oh, that's nice. But I haven't committed to doing anything. I then decide, oh, I like that. I haven't got a yellow one with green raindrops and a pink handle, and I like pink. So I either put it in my cart, if it's online, or I put it in my trolley or in my carry bag. All of a sudden, that value increases to me because I've committed and I have activated my pleasure centers. So I'm starting to get an oxytocin dopamine rush, or injection as we call it. All of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm walking out of the store with the umbrella. So the endowment effect is very important, the IKEA effect. So the example is, I go to a store and I buy a coffee table and I put it there and I go, wow, that looks nice. And my husband, Chris, comes home and I go, look, oh, isn't that beautiful? He goes, that's great. Nice choice. Or I go to IKEA, or it doesn't necessarily have to be IKEA, but it's called IKEA for this particular reason. And I buy a flat pack coffee table and I put it together myself. I also do it before my husband comes home, because there's bound to be an argument. As we all know, the instruction manual from IKEA is basically what we say, serving the divorce papers. It's a bit of a joke that we have here. I'm sure it's a global joke, because we argue about. So I go, okay, Chris is still at work. I'm going to put it together. And I've got the top, and I get the screws and my Allen key and my screwdriver, and I put the legs on and all this. And I go, oh my God, wow, look what I made. So it's not look what I chose, it's look what I made. So Chris comes home and I go, and he goes, oh, coffee table. And yeah. I said, it was this skinny before. Now look at it. So we have created that value by me engaging and putting my hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears into creating this object. All of a sudden, it has an increased value. It's also why when we're selling our houses, for instance, we get emotionally attached. And someone says, as an example, your house is worth $1 million where you thought it was worth $2 million. And you're going, how could it possibly be worth only $1 million? Of course it's worth $2 million. This is my home. I grew up in this. The kids grew up here. We've got this. We put the pool in, and we get all this emotional attachment. And we also start activating a bit of fear. So amygdala is starting to dance around, because we're like, oh my gosh, this emotional attachment. So that is also why there needs to be third parties when it comes to these kinds of things. Number 3, default bias. We use context to make decisions. And quite often we're happy with defaults if they are trusted and reputable companies. Microsoft did a study. They found that 95% of all people keep default settings, even for critical features like autosave. If you go to Word or any of the Microsoft Office applications, save is off. The default is off, and we're happy with that. I'm not. I turned it on, but we think, well, Microsoft that's the default, then sure, it must be okay. We actually we don't think about that. So It's something that we can set in the way that we operate if we are a trusted source that people will rely on. Something called the choice paradox, choice overload sometimes, but choice paradox effect. This is the famous jam study. They had a display of 24 jars of jam, looked gorgeous. People, as shoppers came past, they looked at it and went, wow, that looks great. But only 3% purchased. They then removed 18 jars. There were 6. Didn't look as great. Was still nice, but there's only 6 flavors. So it didn't attract as many shoppers, but 30% of that 40% of browsers bought jam. I see this all the time in sales and business. We think providing more information, more products, more services, more subscriptions, more membership, especially in the SaaS environment and subscription environment, which is a SaaS environment, the more the better. The more memberships we offer, the better. No, we are overloading the brain. We can't make a decision. Remember I said that our brain is metabolically expensive. There is so much going on. We've got 174 newspapers to read today. We just don't have the capacity to choose from 24 jars of jam. 6? Yeah. Okay, I can do that. Loss aversion. People hate to lose. People go to great lengths to avoid losing. This is not, it doesn't come down to competition. Competition is different. The psychological pain of missing out on something is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining the same thing. This was Target in the US. They tried to voucher options. Buy your products, you get a $5 voucher. Or as you go and buy your products, you can save $5. I mean, we all know what we would do. And it was save $5 because the status quo at the moment is okay. I'm going to gain $5. That's nice. But the status quo is how I am now, but I'm going to remove something from it. And it's going to be, I'm going to benefit from it immediately. Again, reward center, prefrontal cortex, dopamine, oxytocin. Oh my God, yes, please. So when I talk to and teach this in the sales and business environment, we love talking about benefits and features and benefits. It can do this, it can do this, it can do that, it can do this. Wow, 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 I can save you this. But what can it not do? What will happen if you don't do it? So use loss aversion bias and flip upside down. If you don't engage with this, you won't be able to receive this, or you won't be able to get this outcome. You won't be able to achieve this. I've done this in board meetings. All of a sudden, everyone pipes up and goes, hang on a minute, tell me more, Leanne. What are you talking about? What do you mean we're not going to be able to achieve this? What do you mean we're not going to reach that goal? What do you mean we're not going to be able to get that financial metric? Rather than saying we can get it if we do this, like, okay, that's great. Off you go. Well, I say, if we don't, this is what we're not going to achieve. All of a sudden, everyone's on board. Let's make this work. Very powerful. And the last one I'm going to talk about today is the cocktail party effect. So we focus on information that is relevant. So these are 2 campaigns. I'm showing this as an example because these were brilliant. This Share a Coke campaign was $2.6 billion campaign. That's how the sales increased. Unbelievable. It was, you probably remember, the campaign where they had cans. It was different in different countries, but essentially the principle was the same. Cans, bottles, whatever, with your name on it. I actually don't drink any carbonated drinks. They make me feel a bit funny. I certainly would never, and have never really drunk Coke, maybe a sip or something like that. I hunted high and low to find a Coke bottle or a Coke can with Leanne on it. And my husband said to me, why? And I went, I don't know, because I want with my name, because it drew me in I wanted something with my name on it. It's that cocktail party effect. It's relevant to me. It's significant to me. Self-reference effect. This was a campaign, it was a while ago by Dove, with women of different shapes and sizes, colors, real women, real beauty. This campaign was the initiator of the Victoria's Secret demise. You now know there's no longer Victoria's Secret show, the underwear lingerie show and all the, with the wings and the angels, which were gorgeous. You know, I used to watch it, and of course used to watch it go, gee, I wish I looked like that, like we all us women did. But there are actually obviously a lot of underlying psychological effects that has had, and this was the catalyst for that. But we see ourselves in that. Again, it activates our pleasure centers. It moves us away from our primitive brain to the front of our brain and makes us want more. So I'm going to open up to questions. But as part of this webinar, and those that are registered and seeing this live and also the recording, I teach this in a lot of detail. It's over a 6-week course, 2 hours on a Friday for 6 weeks. JJ wanted me to put together a deal. Absolutely happy to offer anything that I can encourage people to learn about the science and learn about neuroscience and neuroplasticity. I'm all for. It's my absolute passion and really my life and my professional work. I've got a code there. You can either scan the QR code or go to leanneellich consulting.com/workshop, put the code in, and then you've got a discount on that course. I'm happy to. I do take limited numbers. I like to keep it very intimate so we can all chat. So I take 10 to 12 per cohort. But just so you know, but it will be about sales psychology and the art of persuasion, and going into this and a lot more neuroscience. We go quite deeply into science. I would love to connect with all of you. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There's my details. And if anyone would like to reach out, please do. Happy to chat and happy to share my knowledge and also learn from you guys, because we all have our geniuses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a shallow dive into the depths of your knowledge and your genius. I don't know where to begin, but I think the easy place is to open to the floor and see if any people have got a comment. I love your approach to sales. There is such unnecessary loss aversion to feeling like we shouldn't be selling. So maybe we can ask everybody a question around that presentation. We got Faye and Adrian and Alan. So I don't know, let's start with Faye and let's walk around the room. Faye, if you have any thoughts or comments, throw them over, or whatever is interesting to anybody. What do you think, Faye? Have you got any thoughts?
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Leanne. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I've just got so much, spinning around.
I saw you writing, and I thought,
yes, I was.
Are you writing notes, or are you
I was
writing
drawing
questions?
little things, how I'm connecting it to other things I'm working on and thinking about, because what I loved in particular was your message around sales is not just a transaction.
Yeah.
Because someone said to me many years ago that we are all selling something.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily think about that. We think of sales as that transaction, buying something, So and I guess I'm thinking about this in the creative context. It's another area that I'm interested in, I work in, apart from neurodiversity, and the piece around the decision making, and the 2 reasons, why we make decisions, and that problem solving piece. For creatives, yeah, the cognitive biases that can block and constrain and limit that process is just an observation I made, and it came to light throughout your talk, because everything you were mentioning, I was seeing how, that can really impact that process at that time, or that can really be holding someone back, and those different examples you just went through about where are we at, what's relevant for me, what's not, all of the subconscious thinking. So all of that, it's a lot, but I was just drawing all those connections and just found it really, really fascinating. And I'd be really interested to do your your course on the sales psychology as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you're right. With creatives, there are a lot of blockers. And we there's only, as I was saying, the 174 newspapers that we need to read, which was incredible when I read that statistic. I had to read 3
I've
times.
seen
I
that
just
too.
couldn't believe. Actually, there's a lot of work that Patrick Fagan has done also. He was I actually just got his book too, which I'm going to read over the break. He was the psychologist from Cambridge Analytica, although the disclaimer for him is that he was on the commercial side, not the political side. So, of course, we all know Cambridge Analytica. A lot of them are in prison at the moment. They are the ones that were part of the corrupt campaign for President Trump, and with the manipulation, not ethical nudging or ethical influence manipulation, and the Brexit campaign. So he's written this book on and it was, he's just been released. And he was talking about that too, Faye, about the 174 newspapers and how he just couldn't believe it. And I was like, just incredible. So how are we doing our daily, how do we open ourselves, and how do we create that neuroplasticity around being creative when there's so much going on? Once we know and identify it, which is what I'm trying to do, and it's on my mission to do that, we can then tap into what we need. And that's really important. Yeah.
And I just think helping people understand that, and it's one of the key things of my coaching too, and probably all the coaches who might be listening, is facilitating that neuroplasticity to help people. So thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah. And there's Adrian. She's bottom left on my screen, but there's Adrian. Wait, Adrian, just wave.
Hi
so
there,
Adrian is the and I are the I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation where Adrian's going to be interviewing. We're going to be doing some work and some stuff on the wisdom of 5 brains, aren't we, in January?
Yes, I'm very excited about that. Thank you, Leanne.
Welcome.
Yeah, I loved your purchase formula.
Yes.
And I thought that was just so, it was so clear about the amount of the reward activation over the amount of pain activation. So that was it was really interesting to see how you spoke about that.
Excellent. I'm glad you like that. We can talk about that a bit more if you like to. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Leanne, it's Alice here. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And
I
follow you and like all your stuff on LinkedIn.
But
I just had a quick question. I'm accountant by trade. Doesn't mean anything. I feel I'm same with you. I feel like everybody can be a salesperson and you're selling all the time. But I guess there's still the underlying fear of selling, and I'm an introvert, don't like to, push too hard, which is my problem. But I'm working on it.
Alice, I'm just going to say some of the best, sorry to interrupt you, but I got to say it. Some of the best salespeople I have trained are introverts, because they're really good listeners.
Yeah.
They're really good listeners. They have a steady personality, their personality traits. They're very open. They're great learners. So you know what? There's lots of potential.
I hope so. That gives me hope. But I guess I have one question about your amazing content. So would you use the same tools on if they have the rejection? Would you just use the variety, like time over money, or just use a variety of those tools rather than just focus on the one thing? Or you need to maybe ask them more deeper questions first to really see what their motivation is, and then use the appropriate, would you rather time over money, that type of thing. Is that
correct? So the questioning is around the context, absolutely. And there may be a number of biases or biases that you use in that one process.
Right.
However, when it comes to objections, so I also, part of the course, I teach pricing psych. So using the psychology around pricing and also negotiation. So when it comes to objections, it's different, because with objections, they've gone into fear, they've activated. And we need to bring them out of that. So there's different tactics that we use to create almost a safe environment, and it's almost like a pull. So it's not that we're going to negotiate. People think negotiation, there's a winner and a loser. Negotiation is a winner and a winner.
Yeah.
And there has to be what we called BATNAs. BATNAs, the acronym is best alternative, best alternative negotiation sort of offer. And
Right.
it's what is it that you are willing to compromise on? So what are you willing to remove or give as extra? But also the other party, what are they willing to do? And once you start, and then in that, you then open up conversation around that negotiation, and that's also with objections where you would then use a couple of biases, but it
Right.
wouldn't be one single one the entire process. It will be multiple. Having said that, there are certain stages within the sales process where some are more effective than others.
Understand. And it wouldn't
And it's
confuse them.
knowing when to use them.
Okay, got you. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we go through, we do a lot of that work. Yeah. Obviously, we don't just go, here are the biases, bye-bye, work it out yourself. We actually step through it all. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. Okay.
Do you have time for another one?
Yes, Alan.
Cool. I guess with my question is about B2B sales.
Yep.
Where you're not dealing with just the one person, there's multiple stakeholders and multiple decision makers.
Yep.
How does this apply when you've got, the decision maker who's one step removed from your sales process?
So that's an interesting question, because the decision maker will always be the decision maker. So ultimately, you need to engage with them. So even though they may have a committee or a team that is engaging with the sales, that is doing the mechanics of the sale. So I'm identifying, then you will always need to have the decision maker involved.
Yeah, so just trying to get them in the room as early as possible.
Yeah, get them in there. You don't even necessarily, you can have separate meetings. So quite often, they're very high D personality, so dominant personality. So they'll say to the team, you sort it out, come back to me. So what often happens, especially in you're right, in big corporates and in C-suite level sales, we are dealing with this exact scenario. So I have the team that will be, doing the mechanics of it. You don't necessarily have to have that decision maker in the room with the team, but you definitely need to meet with them separately. So it can be, if you can do it together, that's great, but it's unlikely and not as effective. But you have a separate relationship with them, because they will open up and ask different questions when they're in their own environment than when they are with their team. Because you remember, they've got to be in control. They're the decision maker. So they've got to assert authority. So it will be a different environment. So it's engaging both. And you may use different cognitive biases for each party too.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
Over to you, JJ, I think.
Well, I suppose it's just an opportunity to say thank you so much, Leanne. The deep dive into the stuff is, I feel like I've just read 150 newspapers. But the idea in this community that we're building is to make this learning bite-size friendly. And the idea that we've been speaking about, Leanne, is to make this easy. So here's the sales pitch, and I want you to see the love in the sales pitch, because it's hard to resist a loving offer if it's authentic. So if you throw in love and authenticism and testimonials of benefit, you cover many of the motivations, and you mustn't forget the loss aversion factor. So by the end of this week, we are closing off the Black Friday offer, which has just been going on and on. So by the end of this week, the Black Friday offer to get free into the NPN Hub for a couple of weeks, if you're interested in learning for free from the experts like Leanne, doing these short courses and meeting so many cool people. Now, obviously, Leanne is on the stage and she's wonderful, and there's other people like Faye who you can meet that offer extremely interesting work as well. So the idea in this conversation is to share that we're running a not-for-profit, we're bringing in experts like Leanne, where you can learn from her at no cost. And most importantly, you can meet phase friends who are incredibly interesting and equally engaging. So go to npnhub.com, have an opportunity to join our community, have an opportunity to join our community, and come and see for yourself what we're up to. Our goal is very simple, and that's to make neuroscience accessible and enjoyable. Because if you get that right, you really do have an influencing ability. So the sales pitch is very difficult to agree to if you know what you're buying. And the purchase is twofold. One is access to experts like Leanne, and the other one is building a community of people that are interested in the science and interested in learning. So if you're a neuro nerd and you want to come and hang out with us, go to npnhub.com and listen to Faye's testimonial of all her benefits. So thank you for this opportunity, Leanne, and really thank you for sharing. And we will definitely deep dive further into these tools in the NPN Hub. So see you all there. Leanne, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed our time together today, wherever you might be, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, morning here. Yeah.
Morning
No, thanks
to you
everyone.
guys.
And it's
Very
good to have everyone on board and those that are listening. And I really appreciate the opportunity to share my knowledge, because I'm extremely passionate about it, and it's how we make the world go round.
Please share the recording with me so we can load it in
Yep.
Hub under the recording session. So
I will
make
I'll
sure
send
to do those. Don't want to forget.
Yep, I'll send that through to.
All right. Thanks, Leanne.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Thanks so
Johnson.
much, Leanne.
Have
Okay.
a good
Appreciate
have a good
Bye.
day, guys.
Bye.
Merry
Thank you.
Christmas.
Bye.